Voting for the school board was how anti-trans evangelicals pass all these anti-queer rules in public libraries and schools. Yeah. Like local officials, local representatives that you vote for, like state representatives that you vote for, can literally mean life or death for like trans people. You can have like one pro-trans like state rep that will literally put her body on the line as it has happened in the past, and that will unironically stop like insane legislation from passing, right? So I'm not going to sit here and act like that stuff's not significant. Of course it is. And I'm not going to tell you that like there is no daylight between Donald Trump and Joe Biden on some issues. It is just unconscionable to me that like a lot of the major issues that we were told were really important. If you don't vote for fucking Biden, then like, you know, we're going to do the Mexican melting machine. Donald Trump's going to fucking melt every Latino person. And then when Joe Biden is like, no, Jack, I'm the one who knocks. I'm the one who's going to kill all the Mexicans myself. 4 years later, it's like, we just dropped that. Like, oh, okay, so it wasn't significant 4 years ago to you. It was significant to me 4 years ago. You can't constantly fucking go lesser evil voting only as a way to get yourself to be more evil. Like, this does not give you more permission to be more evil. That's not how people operate either. That's not how people operate at all. Ultimately, though, if you want to vote for Brandon, go ahead. You know what I mean? I will tell you never to vote for Donald Trump, of course. That is fucking ridiculous. And plenty of people will come in here and be like, well, what about Trump? This. Like, Trump would be better on this issue, that issue. That's not true. He will not. All that stuff's ridiculous. Obviously, if you're an RFK Jr. voter, that's hilarious in and of itself. But yeah, so we did a podcast. I don't know what the podcast looks like. Like, I don't know what they cut out, what they kept in. But this was, I would say this was like the only point of contention of the podcast, because like both of the journalists, who were wonderful people, by the way, former Vice, former Vox, you know, a part of that like circuit, they were kind of shocked about what I said about like my advocacy for unconfirmed or like not voting for Joe Biden in the primaries, at least, and we talked about how scary that is. And I did what I always do and try to explain to people that like it is scary, and that they should be scared, and that they should at the very least try to message, like make a calculation internally and try to offer a good faith initiative to say like, no, we do care about young voters. Like, please vote for us. Like, here's what we're doing. The left's favorite political two-streamer, Hasan Piker, doesn't know if he's voting for President Joe Biden. Doesn't care if you do either. Nearly every day, Piker streams on Twitch for around 8 hours. There was more than 2.6 million followers on the platform. He's not a household name by any means, but he's become one of the most influential political commentators for Gen Z and young millennial audiences online over the past 4 years. 3 years ago, he hosted Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on his Twitch stream to play Among Us and urged his audience to go out and vote. So it matters if he doesn't support Biden. Let's talk about it. Hasan has never been the biggest Biden fan, so his disregard for the top of this year's ticket is not much of a surprise. But on the Wired Politics Lab podcast this week, when Leah Feiger, our host and my editor, asked Piker about it, he said he wouldn't support any candidates this year before ultimately replying, I don't know if I'll be voting for Biden. I'll be honest. If you think that lesser evil voting is working for you, if it makes you feel better, go ahead, he told us. One thing he definitely backs is voting uncommitted. I'm an advocate for full-blown pressure, he said. Biden shouldn't expect any of the little support Piker offered last time around. I urged and lent support to Joe Biden in the last election. There were a lot of promises that he made in the last election on domestic policy, codifying Roe v. Wade, protecting abortion rights, and immigration. He was going to basically reverse everything that Donald Trump had done, and he did none of that. Biden's administration has actually had a lot of successes, but even when Biden secures significant funding for a project or a campaign promise, his team has never been good at relaying that to voters. This is actually something I admitted as well. We had this conversation as well. I don't know if they kept that in the podcast or not, but I said what I always say, which is I like how progressive the Biden administration is when it comes to the NLRB, when it comes to its agencies. You got the FTC, you got the NLRB, you got like the SEC. These guys are all actually legitimately doing work, whereas like under the Trump administration, they would not be. Trump very openly advocates and successfully will like maybe not abolish these institutions, but who knows in the second time around, but at least like he will reduce them deliberately. Like he won't fulfill cabinet roles and things like that on purpose, right? Like, so that is a major issue, right? So that is definitely something to consider. But that gets at the communication of it all. And Hasan also touched on something pertinent that voting seems to be talking about this week, the youth vote. On the pod, Piker explains his where was it? His team has never been good about relaying that to voters. Even Biden's TikTok is barely about Biden and mostly bashes Trump rather than communicating the president's accomplishments, which is ironically what Hillary Clinton did as well. On the pod, Piker explains his and his young audience's disenchantment with Biden and their sense that the president has walked back many of the promises he made to them in the last cycle. If I'm young, I don't see anyone right now that is captivating me, Piker told us. Pollsters and strategists like to make the case that Biden won the last election in part to the young voters that turned out to him, but over the past few months, polling has suggested that their support is wavering. A new set of New York Times Siena polls out this week also claimed that in every battleground state except Wisconsin, Biden is polling behind former President Donald Trump. And the youth vote could be a large reason why. Streamers like Parker are arguably some of the most influential creators on the internet, and there's no doubt that they could have a real impact on 2024. Earlier this week, I spoke to Samuel Jasmala, the founder of Progressive Victory, a liberal group that works for streamers to get streamers on Get Out the Vote initiatives. Told me that Twitch's format allows for the kinds of back and forth that can change a person's mind. Definitely think Hasan is a decent representation of young voters this time around. I mean, guys, the young voter percentage, like the young voter participation rate barely fucking hits 30%. And when it does, it was under Obama, and they brought it up on the podcast as well. Like, that was seen as an impressive feat. Like, think about that, 30%. So young people don't vote for a multitude of different structural hurdles, something that I also mentioned on the podcast. And those are areas that we have to solve, like, universal ballot registration and things of that nature that like ease access to voting for everyone. Yeah, Progressive Victory is actually Brianna Wu's, or formerly, I think Brianna Wu was there. I don't know if she's still there or not. But anyway, he told me that Twitter's format allows for the kind of back and forth to change a person's mind. Long-form discussions allow for a lot of nuance and detail to be discussed and creates a greater understanding. Like, these people are educating their audiences when they choose to speak on issues. Progressive Victory's approach to moving online activism into IRL has proven successful. In a recent Ohio canvassing event, the group was able to bring together 20 streamers and 300 volunteers and knock on 40,000 doors for the state's progressives. They built communities around their personalities and the way they speak to their audiences, Jasmala said. The live nature allows for creators to make really compelling asks to their audiences, can get people to take crazy amounts of action. Unlike Jasmala's group, Piker focuses more on issues advocacy than electoral politics, though he will sometimes encourage followers to vote in down ballot elections. His largest priorities are the causes he cares about. I think my impact is way more important when it comes to Chipotle unionizing Lansing, Michigan. I went to the UCLA encampment, and all the SJP and JVP students I met were like, I'm here because I started watching you in 2020 and really broadened my horizons, Piker told us. That impact won't be reaching the Biden campaign anytime soon. The Biden campaign declined to comment on what Hasan said about voting, but it has made, dude, that is so funny to ask the Biden campaign what they think, what they have to say about my statement on voting. It's like, I doubt that they care. And why should they, really? I mean, they shouldn't. I am insignificant in the grand scheme of things, right? But it's made significant investments in his relationships with supportive influencers, and we've talked about them multiple times in this newsletter. But is a video with Luke Skywalker more effective than deeply engaged online communities? I guess we'll find out. On Monday, I spoke with Erin Hattemer, a comedian on TikTok with more than 1.6 million followers. For the past 2 weeks, she has spearheaded a program called Pass the Hat, pairing creators with herself with families in Gaza to raise money for them either to evacuate, pay medical bills, or rebuild their lives. The grassroots operation Olive Branch finds and verifies the families in need, and as of this week, Hattemer has matched more than 700 Palestinian families with online creators. Once a creator is paired with a family, the creator will continue to post about them and their GoFundMes until their goal is reached. I'm working all day. I'll take breaks, but I'm working on emails. I do a lot of coaxing creators, Hattemer told me over the phone. Evacuation is just the first step. But they have people like David Pakman at the White House, so they should care more about you. No, of course they're going to have someone like David Pakman at the White House. David Pakman is the perfect independent content creator he's very safe. Like, David Pakman is, and I'm not even like saying this as a diss, mind you, okay? Like, I've known David for many, many years. He has always been a very cordial person, and especially when it comes to like the State Department line, he oftentimes does not stray away from what, like, on American foreign policy, there's not a lot of disagreement with David Pakman and, like, you know, those in positions of power. So I think that that's like a major difference. And there's I have no issues with David. You know, he can have his own opinions. I think that he is very respectful, and I appreciate that. He's very cordial, and I appreciate that. We do definitely have a lot of severe disagreements when it comes to American foreign policy, but beyond that, I think that we're like, beyond that, when it comes to domestic issues and stuff, like David Pakman and I are fairly aligned, I would say. But ultimately, David fell off as far as Israel. Yeah, I mean, he's certainly had. I don't know. I can't speak on his like latest opinions on it, but yeah, he is definitely had more of a defensive posture when it comes to Israel. That is definitely one of our disagreements, or was one of our disagreements. Anyway, for most non-TikTok users have been demanding that their favorite creators speak out on Palestine in the past few days. I've seen far more creators speaking out on the conflict than before, and I bet it's largely due to Hadamar pestering them. This gets to the question of whether influencers platforms should be required to speak out on political injustices. We saw this at a large-scale George Floyd protest in 2020. What do you think? So that's the article accompanying the actual podcast. I hope that because they filmed it, so I think that it'll be on there as well.